All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Art of Healing with your host, Dr. Judy Jasek of Animal Healing Arts and Matt Rowe of ParsleyPet. During our show, we are talking about your pet's health, raw feeding, and alternative treatments for cancer, unexplained illnesses, and supporting your pet's natural ability to heal. Welcome, Dr. Judy, to this week's show.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here and be talking about how to keep pets healthy and not politics or who's our next president's going to be or any of that stuff. I think this pet stuff is much more interesting.
I think it's and it's more beneficial because it helps the ones that we love.
Exactly.
Everything that we're doing. So last week, this is part 2 of the gut microbiota and why it's so important. And so last week we talked about that bacteria within our bodies outnumbers our cells 100 to 1. And in some cases, they've been showing reports it's even more than that because it's on our skin, in our mouths, in our bodies, all over us, in our hair. We have microbiota everywhere, all over our bodies. And so, we were talking about what it does, and we're talking about how it actually helps promote our immune system. And it actually feeds our brains in how that biochemical reaction happens within our bodies. So by putting good bacteria inside of our body, it actually goes to promote our health. So this week, we're talking about how do we do it? So is there anything else that you wanted to mention from last week that you thought was just paramount and really important for all the listeners or all the viewers to watch or to hear today?
No, I think we covered it. I think we covered what was really what the microbiome is, and that we got bacteria all over, and they are beneficial, the majority of them. And now we get to talk about how to build that right bacterial flora in our bodies, and of course in our pets' bodies.
Yeah. And really, when you look at our society today with what we eat, with the amount of glyphosate, because glyphosate was originally created, and we talked about this last week, as an antibacterial. And what now they're doing with glyphosate is they're spraying it on all of our food. So when you study Larry Boland, what he's doing at HRI Labs, when you actually go through the depth of all the toxins that are in our environment today, we are actually hurting our gut microbiota. So our immune systems are getting suppressed. And we're seeing this with the health of our animals as well, when we're seeing over 50% of dogs being diagnosed with cancer before they turn the age of 10. And you're seeing it much younger than that. So if I believe at this point, I've watched the show from last week, and now I'm watching today, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to improve my gut microbiota, and not only myself, but also inside my pet. So what is a good first step if you're starting to explore, look into, or create a healthy, good gut microbiome?
Well, I think probably the most important step and essential step is to stop killing the bacteria. And this is like what you were talking about. You know, we can't feed foods that have glyphosate, i.e. kibble diets. You know, I see dogs, they love to go roll around in the grass on their back. Well, if that grass has been sprayed, they're getting that glyphosate right on their skin. And we see so much itchy skin, and that's probably a contributing factor. So if we're going to be giving supplements and feeding to grow a healthy microbiome, but we're killing it off every day by what we're feeding, what we're exposing our pets to, you're wasting your time, because you're never going to get there. So first of all, and this includes drugs, even things like heartworm, flea and tick preventatives, these kind of things that are thought to be benign. Every time you give your pet something of any kind of pharmaceutical orally, you're going to be having an effect on the microbiome, and it's probably going to be a negative effect. And just giving them a probiotic supplement or, you know, a little bit of yogurt or something is not going to make up for that. So I look at the microbiome. I really like to use the garden analogy. And the way to have a really healthy garden is to have healthy soil.
Mhm.
The health of the garden starts in the soil, and I've learned a lot about permaculture and not
Mhm.
tilling. You let the fungus and the bacteria and the worms and the bugs and
Mhm.
all the stuff that lives naturally in the soil. You need to let that proliferate, and every time you turn the soil, expose all those microorganisms to the sun, they're going to die off, and you're not going to
Mhm.
have as healthy of a soil, and that's going to make a big difference. And so that's the way I
Mhm.
look at the microbiome. The most important thing is we need to feed it appropriately, not
Mhm.
so much focus on just throwing more bacteria in there, because your average probiotic supplement might have 5 or 6 different strains of bacteria that have to go through the whole digestive tract. So a healthy carnivore, a healthy dog or cat's going to have a very high acid content in their stomach.
Mhm.
So are the bacteria going to survive that? I think that's a big unknown. And I don't think even the companies that make a lot of probiotics even know the answer to that, because the
Right.
bacteria need to get all the way down into the colon. So they need to get through the
Mhm.
stomach, through the small intestine, down into the colon, which is where they are meant to colonize. And are they
Mhm.
going to make it there? Are they appropriate for that particular individual? There's a lot of unknowns, and I think that's why you see really mixed results. I see some pets feel worse on probiotics because maybe they're getting a strain of bacteria that isn't appropriate for them, or the bacteria are colonizing further up in the GI tract, like in the small
Mhm.
intestine where we really don't want them growing. So I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of variables there. And when you think about that, we have thousands of species of bacteria normally
Right.
growing in our gut, just throwing in a handful isn't necessarily going to be creating the populations that they want. But
Mhm.
feeding the microbiome appropriately, I think, is most important, because the right bacteria are going to grow, and the gut is going to balance itself out. And this actually can happen pretty quickly. I listened to a podcast once. This was an individual that had gone to, he went to go live with an indigenous culture somewhere. I can't remember exactly which country, but these are people that lived off the land. They, ate just, native plants. And he said, I'm going to go there and I'm going to eat what they eat. And he actually sent his own stool samples back here to the United States to a
Mhm.
lab like every day. And within 72 hours, his microbiome had changed tremendously. And he said he just felt great because he was eating
Mhm.
these native plants grown out in nature. They weren't just grown with artificial fertilizers or
Yeah.
sprayed with chemicals or anything like that. So I think it's important to look at, okay, what is a species appropriate diet for
Mhm.
dogs and cats? These are carnivores.
Yeah.
Dogs, they'll scavenge, they'll eat a few other things here and there, but for the most part, these should be meat-based diets that
Mhm.
don't have the chemicals in them.
Mhm.
And I think we were talking last time about how much glyphosate is actually in your average serving of kibble. It's like 300 to 400 times what is considered safe for people.
Right.
And a raw food diet, a meat-based diet, there's almost no glyphosate,
Mhm.
as long as it doesn't have additives that might contain glyphosate. So,
Right.
we start there, and then adding things in like tripe, which is, cow
Mhm.
stomach. You're getting a little bit of digested plant material. You're getting some natural enzymes, some
Mhm.
beneficial bacteria that can be, worth adding in. And I don't really like to balance diets so much with a lot of produce, because I think we can
Mhm.
balance diets primarily with animal products, but a
Yeah.
little bit added in. Because if you think about a dog out in the wild,
Mhm.
say, it's a wolf pack takes down an elk. Well, they're that prey animal is rolling around in the dirt, and they're getting
Mhm.
some of these microorganisms from the soil and from the nearby vegetation and things like that. So I think adding in a little bit of vegetable matter to help feed the microbiome. So things like greens, maybe a little bit of berry, these
Mm-hmm.
plants that are high in phytonutrients, not the high glycemic. So I'm not talking potato or beans or peas or lentils or any of that stuff we've talked about. That's high in glyphosate,
Yeah, what they put in kibble. Yeah.
right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so the well-sourced vegetable matter, a little bit of that added in, and variety. I think it's so
Mm-hmm.
important. I mean, I know I get into ruts too. You kind of go to the store and you buy the same things and you tend to eat a lot of the same vegetables. And, I try to
Right.
remember to go there, like, maybe I'll buy a parsnip or something, or, just something
Yeah.
different, because everything you eat that's different, or as you feed your pet that's different, is going to feed different bacteria. So you do just a little bit of different things, and you don't feed the exact same thing every day. You mix it up. So
Yeah.
different meat proteins, you can add in extra organs, add in some fish. You already mentioned the
Mm-hmm.
tripe, and you don't feed everything every day, but you rotate through. So in a week's time, your pet's gotten several different protein sources. You've maybe added in some extra organs, the fish,
Right.
brains, all body parts have nutritional value. So
Yep.
the more variety you feed, the more likely you're going to be to have a healthy microbiome. And then if you do all this and we still have digestive issues. So we've got to, say there's a pet that just had a lot of medications, maybe they've had health issues. It might take a little longer. And we might add in a probiotic. It's not that they're always bad, but I think we can't just use them as a crutch and say, it's like, I want to go eat at McDonald's 3 times a day. What vitamin do I need to take to make that healthy? Like,
Never. It's never
doesn't
going to work out well for you.
doesn't exist, right? So it's
Right.
the same thing. If we're not thinking about what do we need to do to create the healthiest microbiome possible, and
Mm-hmm.
then if we're still not there, then maybe we need to add in a little additional help. And there's natural sources of bacteria too, like fermented vegetables that can
Mm-hmm.
be added in. I think things like grocery store yogurt, to be honest, if you're talking in terms of probiotic benefit, I think it's pretty slim because they're pasteurized. It's pasteurized dairy,
Yep.
and how much live bacteria are you going to get in a pasteurized dairy product? Like, they might start with some live, because you have to have live cultures to make the yogurt.
Right.
And I'm not really big on dairy for pets anyway. I think that could have some other issues. But if you're thinking about, okay, how do I add some extra healthy microorganisms
Sure.
into the gut? I think your natural, truly fermented. Now, you can buy things like cans of sauerkraut, and pretty much it's cabbage in vinegar. It's not truly fermented. I actually make my own sauerkraut.
Mm-hmm.
It's really easy to do. It just kind of happens. You just, leave it at room temperature, cabbage, salt, spring water, and the bacteria do their thing, and
Yeah.
we have fresh, fermented sauerkraut. So adding some things like that in can be beneficial, but again, it's going to vary with the pet. One of my
Yep.
dogs does not do well on fermented vegetables, gives him diarrhea, and my other dog can eat anything.
Yep.
So you have to look at
Right.
the individual pet response, and don't get hung up on the one size fits all marketing claims. There's a lot of very creative marketing out there that says, okay, your dog's got to be healthy. Just, do this supplement, and it's got the prebiotics and the probiotics and some herbs, and everything works really well in some individuals, but there is no one size fits all. So you have to be sure that you're tailoring your plan to the individual pet. And just because something doesn't work, it doesn't mean you keep piling more and more and more supplements on top of that. You stop that one and then maybe,
Mm-hmm.
try something else. And we have to look at what the individual pet response is, because the microbiome is unique. It's unique genetics, just like everything else in our body is. There's not two people, or I guess if true identical twins might look similar, but for all the people in the world, you can be hard pressed to find two people that look exactly the same.
Hmm.
And, it's the same with the microbiome. It's unique genetically to each individual. So we have to be customizing what we do to what the individual pet needs.
That's a great point. And you brought up a couple of points while you were speaking there. And one of them is soil health. And I am a big proponent of soil health. And so as I looked at soil is, yes, part of like a prebiotic that you would put inside your system. So the prebiotic is the soil inside your colon. And this is what's going to allow that
Mm-hmm.
probiotic that you put in there to grow. And then another great point you made is that when the wolf brings down the elk, and when they're eating the elk, they're inevitably eating soil too,
Right.
because they're eating off the ground. They don't pull out a nice plate and serve it up and
Right.
everything.
Tablecloth and yeah. Right.
Yeah, with all that. So they're actually eating parts of the soil, which that contains, if it's healthy soil, good, healthy bacteria that they are naturally bringing in. And so on some of that side too, is when you talked about the stomach being so acidic that it's killing a lot of bacteria. And this is something you might hear is, oh, it's not worth giving a probiotic while a dog is on a antibiotic. The way I look at that is it can't hurt, is you're
Mm-hmm.
definitely going to fuel that up more and more. But then with that probiotic that you're putting into the system, the more fiber content, the more prebiotic you can actually serve while you're feeding the probiotic or set that up allows that to actually pass through the stomach. So I know in humans, when we eat probiotics with vegetable matter, the vegetable matter will wrap around the probiotic bacteria that you're eating. And we're talking microorganisms. I mean, this is what's happening at a micro level, but it's actually protecting the actual good bacteria itself to pass through the stomach chamber and actually get down into the intestines and then go to the colon and then grow and populate. So I think by eating some of the fiber things, so when the wolves ate fur off of the elk, that was actually encapsulating some of the good bacteria that they were eating in there. Yeah, a portion of it's going to get killed, but when we look at it, that's why there's billions when you actually go to
Mm-hmm.
fill it in there or you go to feed it, and it has to be just quantity in that amount. But make sure you have a good prebiotic and think of your dog's body like good, healthy soils.
Yeah, and I think too in the soil, and there are soil-based probiotic supplements, and that's the way. Like if I'm going to recommend a probiotic type supplement, I like to go that way because a lot of those soil-based organisms are in a spore form, which they have their own protective coating in addition to, what you said about, taking in the extra fiber along with them, but they're already in a spore form, like waiting for the right environment for that,
Yep.
for them to grow. And that spore, that helps them travel through, and then they don't start to colonize until they do get into the colon. And so that can be more beneficial. And so there are, a few probiotic supplements out there that they are in the spore form and they last, they're more likely to get down into the colon before the bacteria are exposed to the intestinal environment. So that
Yeah.
can be beneficial. Or, let your dogs get out and be dogs and roll around in the dirt and get a
Yeah.
little dirt in their mouth. And, like
Right.
that sometimes, we want to keep our pets so they're overly domesticated almost, and in the era of masks and hand sanitizers, like we're supposed to live in this sterile world, and it's really not good for our immune system or for our pet's immune system. The tricky part is finding that place where you can expose your pet to the soil and to the environment
Mm-hmm.
without it being toxic. That's where the challenge is these days.
Yep. And you can start in your own backyard. Just stop spraying chemicals on your yard. A good yard should have dandelions in it and really
Mm-hmm.
promote good soil health around you. Start there. So when your dog is in the backyard playing around, if they do, and they will, roll around, eat some dirt, find something, scavenge, do dog things, they're actually getting some of that good bacteria.
Yeah,
inside.
my dogs love to go up in my garden, and they're little enough, they don't do any harm, but they wander around and they might sample some of the plants, and they're getting that dirt on their paws, which they might later
Mhm.
lick off.
Yep.
It's good for dogs to be doing that kind of stuff. I actually heard a webinar I listened to not too long ago that there's actually a species of lactobacillus, the lactobacillus bacteria, that tends to grow on
Mhm.
grass. So we had talked a number of weeks ago about why dogs eat grass and other
Mhm.
weird things. And I learned that they could actually be craving that particular
Mm.
bacteria when they eat the grass, because there's certain bacteria that grow on certain plants, and dogs are pretty instinctive. I mean,
Yep.
much more so than we are. And I've had clients over the years say, my dog goes, I need dirt. Why is my dog eating dirt? And I'm thinking they're probably looking for some good bacteria in there. The
Mhm.
body is just telling them they need something in that soil. I've heard this too about pregnant women craving dirt. I've
Mhm.
actually talked to women that would tell me, like, they go home when they're pregnant and they just want to take out a spoon and go to their houseplants and just start eating the soil. Like, it's an
Yeah.
incredible craving.
Mhm.
And so maybe that's more on the you think about, I used to always think, well, it's a mineral or a particular
Mhm.
nutrient, but maybe it's more about the microbiome.
Yep, I think it is as well. That's where, if you want to do it, carrots with, don't wash, just pull a carrot from the ground out of your garden in healthy soils and just eat the carrot, or give it
Yeah.
to your dog and have them eat the carrot. I mean, there's enough healthy bacteria on that. And I've noticed too that on some leafy greens that I have in my garden that has healthy soils, is they'll look like they have a white powder on my kale. And what it was explained to me is that's actually microbiota. And so when you eat that, just pulling a piece of kale out of your garden and just eating it, healthy soils, you haven't sprayed it with anything, and just eat the kale, is you're actually putting good microbiota. Well, you could actually cut up some pieces of that as well and
Mm-hmm.
just put it inside the food bowl in small amounts. So yeah, there
Yeah.
are definitely great ways to get microbiota and get good bacteria inside the system. So thank you, Dr. Judy, for going through part 2 of this series about good, healthy bacteria inside our pets' bodies, because this is what's going to help them stay healthy for years and years to come.
Yep, absolutely. My pleasure. And it's something that's always evolving. And, like we were talking about before the show, you have to be willing to open your mind and learn. What you've been doing for years and years and years with your pets may not be the best thing, because we're always learning new things. So
Right.
be open to being educated and trying something new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Amen. So, what's the best way for somebody to get a hold of you, Dr. Judy?
Well, my practice is Animal Healing Arts. My website is ahavet.com. My email is info@ahavet.com. And our phone number is 720-515-2421.
Awesome. And you can always find us at ParsleyPet.com and have your dog nutritionally tested. Find out what foods your dog should be eating. Find out if they're receiving the proper amount of nutrients for their health, because it can be the difference from them being sick and not sick. So definitely go to ParsleyPet.com and find out everything you can about the nutritional blueprint, and we'd be happy to help you. So thank you again, Dr. Judy, for this week's show. I so appreciate you.
Thanks, Matt. My pleasure.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Bye.